There's a very nice holiday surprise from PlayStation. Kratos and Mimir are headed to Valhalla in an adventure that blends God of War Ragnarok's combat.
Well, that's actually nice. I didn't really hope we will get a DLC for Ragnarok, so yeah, let's do all the achievements here. So this is a new and smaller video format on this channel where we complete DLCs, smaller games and everything in between that doesn't require like 150 hours of gameplay. So if you're new to this channel, welcome. If you are an old-timer, welcome back, and today we are going through God of War Ragnarok Valhalla DLC. So let's get right into it.
Trophy hunter, we're on a quest for fame. Gotta conquer every game, leave a mark in the Hall of Fame.
So generally, this is a roguelike mode very similar to The Last of Us Part 2 No Return. But to better describe it, it is basically the upgraded Niflheim labyrinth from the first God of War game. There's a labyrinth that we need to go through with a series of encounters, occasionally mini-bosses, all that jazz. The big difference from The Last of Us here is that Valhalla actually has a story and a whole new boss. So let's see what this DLC has in store for us. The game starts with Kratos and Mimir arriving at the mysterious Black Coast that reveals to be the entrance to Valhalla. Kratos is of course being Kratos, so he forces his way into Valhalla and it serves as a tutorial run for us. At this point we get stripped of all equipment and skills we may have acquired and also get a severe debuff which makes the enemies super strong. So from here we get a bit of clarity in regards to what's going on. Basically someone wants us here and generally someone wants Kratos to go through his personal hell or heaven, whichever Valhalla is basically. After our first death in Valhalla we are transported back to the Black Coast and we also meet Freya and her Valkyries. Freya berates us for breaking and entering into Valhalla because it's wrong.
You marched into Valhalla without even talking to us first?
Nice to see you too, milady.
But eventually allows us to enter normally. And actually before coming to Valhalla, Freya, who is now the Queen of Nine Realms, invited Kratos to participate in her council as the new God of War. But he refused, because he thinks he's not worthy and he's afraid of wielding such power again.
Alright, gentlemen, let's send you in properly prepared this time. First, Valhalla requires you to perform the ritual of selection.
So after the start of the story, I go ahead and change some armor and get some awesome drip, boys! There's a lot of cool armor that you can find in the DLC. The armor doesn't give you any stats anymore, so you can pick the one that you like without fearing of losing fashion. We go further into the story and get flashbacks for some old memories of Kratos. We also get Helios' head instead of Mimir, who can be as hilarious as he is annoying. Eventually we place Helios' head in the sacrificial cage and it turned out to be a bad decision. We get rescued by the Valkyrie and generally she explains to us that we have to go through all the ordeals in the Valhalla and make all the right decisions and generally correct all the wrongs that we did before. The overall gameplay is pretty clear now. We get through some lower levels of Valhalla that consists of 2 or 3 encounters and defeat a mini-boss. After that we can ascend to higher Valhalla planes where we can advance the story and tackle the final labyrinth.
My lady! Stop. You've seen me worse. I'm not sure about that, boss. Hush. It's nothing air can't heal.
This could take some time.
So after closing enough rifts in the final labyrinth, we can ascend one final time where we meet Tyr. He informs us that he was the one who called us here actually in order to test Kratos' resolve and help him get to the bottom of his own psychological turmoil. Obviously he offers Kratos a fight, as when the body is occupied by fighting, the head can work out the rest. And honestly Tyr fights are very well done, and as you may have guessed already, this is not the last time we fight him.
Up to reputation.
You son of a bitch.
What's the matter?
The CIA got you pushing too many pencils?
I just like the fact that he has different weapons that he kind of like gathered from all of his journeys. Basically the same as Kratos. And like his weapons are pretty awesome. I like that Aztec sword, which is pretty cool. So after defeating Tyr, we are offered to go through the final door, but as soon as Kratos peeks inside, he gets a panic attack and we are teleported back to the beach.
I'm not ready.
So after a few more runs, we advance the plot a bit, we face some past enemies, we confront some of the Kratos' fears.
Some of your shame. That's so thoughtful. Ah, now you've done it. You're being judged. And we all know your past actions wouldn't pass muster with anybody.
And generally, it's actually pretty well made, and it brings you through all three of the original God of War games, which is quite a stroll down the memory lane. And after a few more runs, we also get the Pandora statue, basically representing God of War 3.
Oh, how precious. I don't think you can be trusted to keep that safe at all. Pretty sure he agrees with me.
And before we advance further, I would like to speak a little bit about the actual mechanics of the game. So, being a typical roguelike, you can obviously upgrade Kratos in between the fights, where you can pick different perks like upgrading your weapons or getting the special skills or a bonuses to your stats. And after completing a run, you also gather a certain amount of a special currency that you can spend on permanent perks, which usually include upgrade to health, upgrade to rage, upgrades to different stats, and well, generally you can build your Kratos the way you want. And it actually opens up a path to a lot of interesting builds, basically the same as the original game, but I think it's a bit more diversified. And I kinda like the fact that you can actually change the difficulty of the game anytime you want, and I really like that fact, because you can actually start on lower difficulties while you are weak, and as you build your character, as you build Kratos, as you get more upgrades, you can switch to higher difficulties, get more currencies, get more perks, and advance further. And I think it strikes a very good balance between the actual difficulty of the game and your skill, because the more you play this game, the better you get at fighting different enemies. And speaking of enemies, we actually get quite a few new types here. We get a few enemies from the Greek era of God of War, and those enemies actually can drain your rage, which is like a new debuff in the game, which is actually quite nice. We also get a whole new rage mode where Kratos can summon the Sword of Athena, which I think should have been in the main game. I mean, I was waiting, at least in Ragnarok, I was waiting that at some point we get the Sword of Athena, but they decided to leave it for the DLC, and it's a decent rage mode. It's basically the same as the rage mode where you actually start punching everybody with your fists, but a bit more, you know, sophisticated, I would say. And if you're feeling particularly brave today, you can also buy a special debuff, basically the same debuff that we got by breaking and entering into Valhalla, and it will make all the enemies much stronger, basically an unfair mode. So if you want to challenge yourself, you can do that. Or if you, for example, min-maxed your Kratos to the full, and you want to get that additional layer of difficulty, you can do it, and that's great as well. So eventually, after defeating Tyr a couple of times, we get to the final round of our sparring session. And I have to say, he becomes quite challenging. We now have to go through all three of his phases, dealing with his massive HP pool and constant summoning of annoying mobs, such as centaurs, which are like not really easy to beat on their own. So Tyr basically hands my ass back to me maybe 3 or 4 times before I finally level up massively and able to defeat him. And eventually Tyr explains how, with all the shit that Kratos did, he eventually sacrificed himself to release hope back to the world, and how he actually brought hope to 9 realms as well. With that, Kratos decides to finally walk through the last door and face his most feared adversary, himself.
えてくれたいろんな見た目になれるアプリなんだって。どれどれ？
Well done here then. So, what now?
Now, I believe I would like to sit here for a while.
And I don't even really know how to comment this. I think this is a great ending and deserves conclusion of Kratos' story. You can really feel all the hate, doubt and regret that Kratos is experiencing throughout both games, and actually seeing and feeling he is being relieved of those by going through that personal journey is amazing. I don't really think there could have been a better ending. But of course, with the ending of the story, we still need to do the cleanup. First of all, we complete couple of more assignments from Valkyries to get understood the assignment, find 3 boat captain keys for you again, and participate in a fight at the forum, which I have found completely by accident.
Anything noteworthy about this area, brother?
It was the Forum of Hercules on Mount Olympus. It was here I fought and killed my half-brother.
And because I switched to a harder difficulty, at some point we acquire a shit ton of fleeting echoes, receiving 1 more achievement. And this brings us to the hardest achievement in the game, visiting all 9 realms. To be completely honest, to the very end I could not figure out how to get to the last realm that was Muspelheim for me. I was pretty sure I have visited all the realms except that. So after a lot of thinking and some googling, it appeared that the intermission realm that you get between lower and higher worlds depend on the weapon mastery you choose at the very beginning. And since I was picking either spear or axe, I never got to Muspelheim because this is what you get if you pick Blades of Chaos.
The flute you found.
So, what can I say about Valhalla DLC? To be honest, there's not much to say. It's a solid DLC with a very sweet chunk of story that brings a feeling of closure to the whole Kratos arc. And it's a happy ending, so what's not to like? I mean, who if not Kratos deserves a happy ending after all the shit that he has been through? Some could argue, of course, that he deserves a fate far worse, but I think that the 2 latest games masterfully depicted his path to redemption. I mean, all the scenes where Kratos showed that he cares about Atreus and the other characters, where he is acting as a complete opposite to his older self, always kept me on the edge of my seat. This is kind of metamorphosis when an anti-hero becomes a real hero is always great to look at, provided it is done in a good way. And lastly, I think God of War franchise in its full managed to capture the respective atmosphere of its time. I mean, the original trilogy showed this era where people finally received decent graphics on either consoles or PC, and everything that everyone ever wanted at that time is more epic fights and senseless violence. But then we all grew up, and slowly but surely came an era of video games where the story and, God forbid, actual character development became more important. And both the original trilogy and the new games captured the essence of both these eras, and it also kept the story seamless, which is awesome. I wonder what era of video gaming will come next, and if we will see more God of War games capture the essence of the time to come, unless it's going to be a God of War Battle Royale. Oh yeah, DLC is 7 out of 10.
Trophy hunter, we're on a quest for fame. Gotta conquer